Prapovijesna pećina duboko ispod australske pustinje Nullarbor Plain.
Hey, I'm down.
Ovo je jedan od najzabačenijih i najneplodnijih krajeva u državi. Ali u njemu se nalazi tajna koja je bila skrivena više od 500 milijuna godina.
You know, this is something that us paleontologists dream of every day.
And this is, without doubt, one of the most important paleontological discoveries ever made in Australia.
Milijunima godina prije nego što je čovjek kročio na australski kontinent, ovim su predjelom vladale velike zvijeri.
There were giant goannas, the order of 6 meters in length. There were huge gargantuan birds, the largest that ever walked on the planet, came from Australia at this time, the dromonithids or thunderbirds. We had a whole range of large animals, a bunch of giant kangaroos and huge wombats the size of small cars. And at that time it was kill or be killed, and it was pretty well cutthroat.
Na vrhu hranidbenog lanca nalazio se okrutan ubojica. Međutim, većina onoga što su znanstvenici o njemu znali bilo je puko nagađanje.
I have absolutely no doubt that an animal the size and bulk of Thylacoleo could have pulled down much larger animals, bigger than itself, like a giant wombat, Phascolonus, the size of a small car, or giant herbivorous kangaroos. That's the sort of creature that would have been fodder for Thylacoleo. Sitting in my office looking at the computer, and an email came through, and it was an email from someone I'd never met before. And then I saw there was an attachment, and I clicked on it, and as the attachment slowly opened, my jaw dropped. There was a beautiful complete skeleton of a marsupial lion, Thylacoleo, the first one ever found that was complete right to the tip of the tail. Oh yeah, I wanted to go straight away.
Zbog jedne neočekivane i pošte koju je primio Zapadno-australski muzej, australski će paleontolozi krenuti u uzbudljivu pustolovinu otkrivanja.
Up until the discovery, we basically had very little idea about the entire south central portion of the continent.
Ali ravnica Nullarbor Plain je jako udaljena i taj je kraj opasan. Pust krajolik bez drveća, kako mu i samo ime govori, nastanjuje malo životinja i još manje ljudi.
This is perhaps one of the most important Western Australian museum field trips I've ever been on, and perhaps one of the most dangerous missions I'm ever going to do, but I don't know exactly where I'm going.
John Long i njegov tim uputili su se prema tajnoj lokaciji koju su otkrili speleolozi dok su u Nullarboru tražili nove jame za istraživanje.
The Nullarbor is one of the great vast flat areas of Australia. Very easy to get lost in because there just aren't any landmarks. It's a huge area covering several thousand square kilometres. Right here where I'm standing 20 million years ago was the bottom of the sea. Limestone rock was formed. Today the Nullarbor Plain is vast and featureless, but below ground is a different story. When groundwaters rose up, percolating through that limestone rock, dissolving away calcium carbonate, the result was the formation of caves. Today, there are thousands of caves throughout the Nullarbor region.
Ali većina ovih pećina ostaje neotkrivena i u njih čovjek nikada nije kročio.
You know, finding a cave on the Nullarbor is like finding a pinpoint on a giant map of Australia the size of a football oval sort of thing.
Nekoliko tjedana ranije speleolog Ken Boland je leteći iznad pustinje u ultra lakoj letjelici naišao na ulaz u neprocjenjivo skrovište fosila. Australskim je paleontolozima ovo bilo ravno otkriću svitaka s mrtvog mora.
And although they didn't have any professional qualifications like geologists or paleontologists, they were more than amateurs. They were skilled cavers and very experienced at locating caves and exploring them and mapping them and surveying them.
Ken Boland neće nikada zaboraviti trenutak kada je prvi put ugledao prapovijesnog grabežljivca.
There was one particular skeleton that Ray spotted from the distance, and I shone the cap lamp in that direction. I said, well, it doesn't look like an old cow to me. I wonder what it is. And we went over to it, and Ray recognised it straight away as being Thylacoleo in pristine condition, just as it had died.
We were about almost 2,000 kilometres from Perth and almost 900 kilometres to the nearest town.
Dugo su čekali na ovo. Znanstvenici će uskoro prvi put vidjeti fosile, ali ovo nisu pećine u koje možete samo ušetati. Postoje 3 ulaza i svi su opasni.
And it's about an 18-metre drop to the floor, and then the caverns go on, in all directions for quite a way.
Jedini način za ulazak u ovu škrinju s blagom je spuštanje užetom. Nekima je ovo posve novo iskustvo.
Basically, each time they do it, they've got to treat it like it's their life in their hands.
Ključno je da ih poduče iskusni speleolozi.
Use your legs and keep straight.
Vjetrovi na ulazu u pećinu su opasni čak i za iskusne speleologe, kao što je paleontolog Gavan Prido.
While you're on the rope or ladder, you're often getting buffeted around, so you've got to be very careful at all times.
Use your legs.
Tu su i druge brige. Postoji međunarodno ilegalno tržište za trgovanje fosilima. Ove su kosti neprocjenjive, pa zato sve stalno brine njihova sigurnost.
It's very important because of the security of this cave that we do not all walk in the same line.
Čak i otisci koji ostaju iza čovjeka koji prolazi 2 puta istim putem mogu biti znak onima koji bi zbog stjecanja zarade brzo zgrabili sve što mogu.
So you'll each need one of these.
We need one of these?
Yep. Right.
Okay, now just give Eve a hoy and let her know you're coming down.
Okay, Eve, I'm coming down.
Prije pola milijuna godina u zemlji toliko različitoj od ove, Thylacoleo carnifex, mladi lav tobolčar, kralj australskog zaleđa, upao je kroz mali otvor u tamu vapnenačke pećine. Nakon što je danima lutao u tami, uginuo je od gladi i dehidracije. Kako su prolazila stoljeća, meso se polako mumificiralo i stopilo s prašinom na tlu pećine, a kosti su ostale otkrivene. U gornjem svijetu je došlo i prošlo nekoliko ledenih doba. Civilizacije su nastajale i bivale poražene, a kosti su i dalje ležale ovdje netaknute.
I will never forget that moment as long as I live when I first laid eyes on the Thylacoleo skeleton. I was totally gobsmacked, just entirely exhilarated from the inside out. I just saw this specimen and there it was. It was reality, not just an image on the computer screen. It was a complete skeleton of Australia's largest marsupial killer.
Sve su kosti bile na mjestu. Kostur je ovdje u mraku počivao stotinama tisuća godina, a unatoč nevjerojatnoj količini vremena koja je proteklo, na njima nije bilo prašine.
A pristine find, it's never been tampered with, and it gives us scientists the opportunity to go in and not only to study the bones before we touch them, but to take samples for dating or ancient DNA, and we know there's no contamination down there, and that's very important for the science.
Ali pustolovina je tek započinjala. Sljedeća 3 tjedna u kojima će tim provoditi dane u podzemlju iskapajući svoje blago, bit će test strpljenja i tjelesne izdržljivosti.
Total pitch black darkness, mostly totally silent. You do get a bit of wind and a bit of air diffusing through the caverns in the rocks at times, but mostly it's a pretty isolated, probably about as isolated and lonely as you can get anywhere in the world. And at times everyone else would go off and just leave me by myself, and at times the batteries would go low on your torch and you'd have to sort of quickly get your backup torch and change your headlight. Of course, if the headlight went out and your other torch ran out, you'd be in total pitch black and you wouldn't know any way to go.
Lav tobolčar je prvi put identificiran prije 150 godina iz ostataka kostiju pronađenih u pećinama u blizini jezera Kolon Gulag na australskoj istočnoj obali.
Sir Richard Owen described this animal back in 1859, the time Charles Darwin had just written his book on the evolution, as the fellest of predatory beast. And he called it Thylacoleo carnifex. Thylacis for pouch, leo for lion, carne for meat, and fex for cutting. So this was the meat-cutting marsupial lion. But of course, it's nothing to do with lions.
Desetljećima su paleontolozi vodili rasprave o ovom biću. Mnogo od onoga što je Owen zaključio o Thylacoleu nije moglo biti znanstveno potvrđeno. Sigurno se nije radilo o lavu. Ali jednostavno nije pronađeno dovoljno fosila da bi dobili konačne odgovore na pitanja što je zapravo jeo. Je li bio mesojed ili se hranio biljkama? Ako je bio mesojed, na koji je način lovio plijen? Je li trčao? Je li se penjao na drveće? Koja je bila uloga tih spektakularnih očnjaka i do koje je veličine lav tobolčar mogao narasti?
If you look at the limb bones here, they haven't fully quite matured. I mean, the ends of the limb bones haven't joined like this one here. So in an adult, they always fuse. So it must be a sub-adult, maybe a teenager. Finding a complete skeleton of a marsupial lion is far more important than having hundreds and hundreds of isolated bits and pieces from different localities, because for a start we can build up an accurate picture of what the animal was like and its real proportions, and we can also start to look at its functional morphology, how that animal operated as a creature. You know, how did its feeding mechanism work? How did its hands and feet work? How much movement was there in its shoulder and its backbone? And from these studies we can then start to build up a realistic idea of Thylacoleo as a living animal.
Ali iskapanje dragocjenih fosila nije jednostavan zadatak.
The skeleton was so fragile Now, had someone actually tried to pick up the skull at that stage, it probably would have just fallen apart in their hands or fallen to dust because it was very, very delicate. It had lost a lot of the minerals in the skull, had sort of decomposed, and we had to actually spend a week of just applying glues to harden that skeleton before we could touch it.
Da su se prenaglili, da su se usudili pomaknuti kosti prerano, kostur koji ih je strpljivo čekao u mraku više od 500 milijuna godina, pred očima bi im se pretvorio u prah. Prije ovoga otkrića, najcjelovitiji pronađen kostur lava tobolčara nije bio ništa doli nekoliko kostiju koje je nagrizao zub vremena. Ali i sada kada su u pećine počele polako otkrivati skrivena blaga, znanstveni se udžbenici pišu iznova.
Okay, what I have here is the first ever assembled tail of Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion. This is the only specimen known that had the tail complete. What we see is it had a long, muscular and powerful tail, a sort of tail befitting an animal that was an active predator.
Well, I just came down the rock pile here and I saw down the slots with larger bones of the legs, and then I came around to get a better look and there I saw some bones.
Drugi su članovi tima nastavili istraživati pećine i pronalazili su sve više kostura.
There's some big bones there that look like the limb bones, and also vertebrae, maybe a bit of hip, and possibly the other lower jaw.
Važnost ovog otkrića iz Null Arbora raste svakim danom.
This is the 11th Thylacoleo we've found in these caves so far, and every specimen gives us new information that other material doesn't show. This particular animal came down in the cave and probably got wedged right here between the rocks. The head of the animal was here, and the front part of the arms fell down here. Right.
Ali nije samo lav tobolčar propao kroz ovaj otvor i izgubio se u labirintu pećina. Tlo pećine je bilo krcato starim kostima. Očigledno su otkrili groblje na kojem počivaju vrste koje nismo vidjeli nikada do sada.
That is the most weirdest kangaroo I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. That's
great big black and grey horns sticking out over its eyes. Like a bloody devil wallaby.
It's certainly a new species, and I think there's an excellent chance that it is probably a new genus and species.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So that's a major find.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And a complete skeleton too.
S otkrićem svakog novog kostura, predodžba o životu u pustinji Null Arbor u australskoj prapovijesti postaje sve potpunija.
One of the things that does come home when we look at a fauna on the Nullarbor, say 500,000 years ago, that contained trees, is that there can be a very rapid transition from large forested areas to Nullarbor desert in a short time. The vegetation around here is pretty much what it was like about 200,000 years ago when Thylacoleo and the giant kangaroos were roaming around the landscape. Today out there it's dry and flat and there's no trees at all. But that's because the aridity has spread south, pushing the forest land further south towards the coast. I think that this is pretty close to what the environment was like that Thylacoleo lived in.
Iako se krajolik na površini izmijenio, pećine Null Arbora nastale milijunima godina ranije su čekale. zamka za neoprezne. A jesu li sve te životinje jednostavno upale kroz otvor?
I can imagine that a carnivore like Thylacoleo might have got a whiff of a decomposing giant wombat or a kangaroo down the cave and thought, well, there's a nice meal down there, and they might have crawled in a little bit to look and then fell in. That's one scenario. Or otherwise they were just running along chasing something, didn't see the hole, fell straight down. Who knows? All we know is that in terms of geological time, you only have to have one animal fall down a hole every 100 years, and over the course of several thousand years it mounts up to a lot of skeletons.
Duboko u pećini John Long i Gavan Prideaux naišli su na važnu prekretnicu.
After 4 days of painstaking work preparing this skull, today we're finally able to pick it up and look at it in its entirety. And what we see are the powerful dentition, the big stabbing incisor at the front, this big shearing premolar. And when we look at the lower jaw, we see a similar arrangement. A powerful stabbing incisor at the front and a shearing premolar and molar, which act like a pair of secateurs to cut through the flesh of giant 3-metre kangaroos or big diprotodontine marsupials.
Pojedinosti lubanje su bile izvanredne i isprva paleontolozi nisu znali da su ovi fosili tako nevjerojatno stari.
In fact, it looked so well preserved, I was thinking it might only be a few thousand years. It might be one of the youngest skeletons of megafauna yet discovered. So the first thing I thought about was we should take some samples to test for ancient DNA. Now, DNA is the building blocks of life that we all have, and it's the blueprint for every species on Earth. In modern creatures, it's easy to take a tissue sample and extract the DNA out of it and to characterise that species by the gene combinations and so on, the chromosomes. But when we look at fossils, it's often difficult to get DNA unless you get very good preservation. Now, in some cases, animals that have died in the last few thousand years have residual DNA within inside some of their bones and teeth, and these can be extracted and studied and see how they fit into the big picture of life. Unfortunately, we didn't get any DNA out of those bones, but then the reason why became obvious when the dating results came in. The skeleton was far older than we'd ever imagined. It wasn't a few thousand years, it wasn't a few tens of thousands of years, it was probably 500,000 to 1 million years old.
Ali zašto ova bića ne postoje danas? I kada su nestala?
You know, the debate is still raging. Some people argue that this time period coincides with humans coming into Australia, and it would have been quite easy for people to hunt out the large lumbering herbivores, and then the rest of the food chain might have collapsed and creatures like Thylacoleo wouldn't have had enough food to eat and would have become extinct. Another argument argues for the rapid climate changes that Australia's and the rest of the world's experienced. You know, if you can go into a maximum ice age and out of it again in the period of 10,000 years, then you could certainly have major changes that put pressure on the environment and the animals that live in it. So the debate still rages. I tend to favour the idea that it would have been fairly easy and quick for people to hunt out the big herbivores and cause collapse of the food chain, but we still haven't got any direct evidence of it. We're still waiting to find a Thylacoleo or a diprotodon with a spear in it, but maybe we never will.
Tim se sada već 2 tjedna nalazi u Null Arboru. Prljavo je i prašno i nemaju viška vode koju bi potrošili na tuširanje. Opremanje ovako velike misije je veliki pothvat. Kampiraju daleko od civilizacije i moraju biti spremni na sve. Ne postoji mogućnost brzog spasa ako nešto krene po zlu.
So that once you're out there to do the work, and you can't go to any shops, you can't buy extra food or get extra water. You have to bring in all your food, all your fuel, all your water, all your expertise, and then just do your work.
Vremenski su uvjeti često ekstremni. Po danu je temperatura preko 30 stupnjeva, a noću pada blizu ništice. Ali bez obzira na vremenske uvjete u kampu, duboko ispod zemlje temperatura je uvijek jednaka i rad se nastavlja.
Time to go, guys.
Posao paleontologa je često opasan jer rade u mraku iz dana u dan.
You right there, Paul? You guys got enough lights down there?
Fossils are not always draped on a nice flat surface. They wedge between cracks and then sort of dribble down into the spaces between the rocks below. One has to often crawl down between the spaces between the rocks and come in from underneath to get the remainder of the bones, and sometimes the rocks are fairly precarious, so there's an element of risk when you're doing that, but really the adventure's worth it.
Here's a good one. Your hands, both hands, very carefully. That's it.
Mnoge fosile moraju nježno otkrivati kistom. Nagli bi pokreti mogli uništiti posmrtne ostatke.
So this is your major job, to get someone here to just with a light brush away the gypsum, consolidate the bone.
Yes, beautifully preserved bones.
Yeah, I wouldn't come any closer actually. I think there's bone all through this area. In fact, the whole skeleton could be right here.
Sitting in this.
Pećine su otkrile toliko blaga da su se John Long i tim našli pred problemom. Koliko ponijeti sada, a koliko ostaviti za neki drugi put?
Just goes on and on and on.
Well, the question is, if we leave it here planning to come back, we don't take anything, we don't get the funding, or we get sidelined into other things, I'd still feel better if at least we got some of the better specimens and we marked exactly where they came from.
It's a big job, but it's a question of, do you want to get the information that's available here out, or do we want to just scoot the goodies off the top and leave it at that?
These fossils haven't even been studied or described, and there's whole new species here. So the loss of knowledge, the loss of national heritage is the main concern to me.
Sada moraju označiti svaki lomljivi fosil i svaki zasebno zamotati za put do zapadno-australskog muzeja. To je naporan i usamljen posao. A moraju se suočiti s još jednim izazovom prije nego što se fosili nađu na površini i prije nego što znanstvenici mogu krenuti prema svojim laboratorijima. Razlike u tlaku zraka iznad i ispod površine zemlje stvaraju vjetrove koji fijuču kroz ovaj uzak otvor. Jedan pogrešan potez i vjetar bi mogao baciti dragocjenu prtljagu prema zidovima od vapnenca, razbijajući u nekoliko sekundi ono što je nastajalo milijunima godina. Protekla su 3 tjedna bila duga i naporna, ali je put u svijet znanosti tek započeo.
We have preconceived ideas about the ways animals like this may have moved, but to actually discover the reality of its movement will be a lot of investigative work, a lot of careful anatomical reconstruction, looking at ligaments and joints and the way the ankles and the hands actually function, and then to compare it with its living nearest closest relatives, which currently would have to be the wombats, possums and the koalas.
Leo Carnifex čitavo je stoljeće zbunjivao znanstvenike. Desetljećima su nam njegova veličina i snaga bile jasne, ali će tek sada, kada imamo priliku proučiti cjelovit kostur jedinke, postati jasno njegovo ponašanje i okoliš u kojem je živio. Vodeći će svjetski stručnjaci za lava tobolčara morati udružiti svoje vještine da bi složili ovu slagalicu. Dr. Rodwell sa sveučilišta Flinders iz Adelaida i dr. Peter Murray iz Prirodoslovnog muzeja Alice Springs svjetski su priznati stručnjaci za morfologiju australskih tobolčara. Znanstvena je zajednica uvijek imala podijeljena mišljenja oko pitanja je li lav tobolčar bio lovac.
Now, the problem with that is, of course, is trying to work out how, if this animal is a carnivore, how it actually captures its prey. Because in effect, these diprotodont teeth, when they mesh with the other upper incisors here, form something analogous to a parrot's beak. This animal could puncture a hole in the prey quite easily, but it would never be able to hang on to its prey.
It could be an infection, actually, is another possibility. Anyway,
Svaka kost priča paleontolozima svoju priču, ali ovi su fosili tako krhki i dragocjeni da je problem često rukovati njima. Suvremena tehnologija nudi rješenje. Svaku kost oprezno skeniraju kako bi mogli proučavati trodimenzionalne modele na ekranu računala. Sada kada mogu proučiti čitavu strukturu prednjeg uda, što znanstvenici do danas nisu mogli, postaje jasno je li lav tobolčar bio lovac ili nije.
And here you will see the very large slashing claw on the thumb. So here was a mechanism whereby this animal could capture and hold its prey. So once Thylaccoleo has grasped its prey, it's then in a position to deal the death blow. And it can deal the death blow with these sharply pointed lower incisor teeth. And of course this would be an ideal way of doing things like severing the spinal cord or suffocating the prey by grasping around the trachea.
Dok paleontolozi otkrivaju tajne pojedinačnih kostiju, ilustrator počinje dodavati meso kosturu i određivati proporcije životinje, oblik tijela i muskulaturu. Uz pomoć ovih crteža nastaje prvi precizan trodimenzionalni model lava tobolčara. Odavde stvar preuzima računalna tehnologija. trodimenzionalni laseri skeniraju model napravljen od pjene kako bi stvorili digitalni prikaz. Napokon su oživjeli prapovijesnog grabežljivca. Ali kako se zapravo kretao? Ako je lav tobolčar bio lovac, kako je napadao plijen?
Is it a pursuit predator? Does it chase its prey down? Does it drop on its prey out of trees? Does it stalk its prey in the same way that lions stalk prey?
Mjesta gdje se mišići spajaju, te veličina i oblik kostiju koje pripadaju ovom cjelovitom i nedirnutom kosturu, sada daju jasan odgovor na pitanje o kojem znanstvenici raspravljaju desetljećima.
The hind legs are low geared, they're powerful. And indeed if we look at the position where the muscle scar, where the muscle comes off the thigh bone for rotating the thigh about its fulcrum point here, it's attached way down here. So it's a very, very low geared and powerful hind limb. So there is nothing in the back part of the skeleton, or indeed in the shoulder blades, in their structure, to suggest this animal is in any way a fast-moving animal. The speed comes with the speed with which it can slash with that forearm. So I think this animal really is one that carefully stalks its prey.
Nikada do sada nismo imali priliku analizirati i proučavati cjelovit rep lava tobolčara.
One of the interesting features of the tail is that are these little tiny bones here, these little V-shaped bones that are called chevrons, like a roof or a chevron. And what they actually do is they protect the blood vessels that run underneath the tail at the point where the tail flexes down to the ground. This is the sort of thing that you see in kangaroos, and kangaroos are capable of propping themselves up on their tail, tripoding, if you like, with the tail and the two hind legs. And of course, if you think about that for a moment, if this animal is actually catching its prey with its front legs and its slashing claw, being able to tripod back on the tail and the hind feet frees up the arm for slashing or grasping.
Znanstvenici također prvi put imaju priliku proučavati cjelovitu stražnju šapu.
First thing we notice here is the toes here, the ones we do have got the same little hooded retractable claws, cat-like claws that we saw on the hand. But interestingly, it also has the hallux or the big toe, and here's the remnants of the big toe. We're missing the distal phalange on here. So on the hind foot it's got a little nubbin of a big toe on the side. This is the same sort of feature that you see in possums.
Čini se da je lav tobolčar imao šape kojima je mogao hvatati grane. To je dokaz da se mogao penjati na drveće. Analizom mehanizma za kretanje znanstvenici mogu saznati puno o okolišu u kojem je životinja živjela.
Basically, beyond about 40,000 years, there were no fossil sites known from the Nullarbor. So this fills in a massive time gap and a massive gap in our understanding. There's nothing to indicate that it was an especially wet environment. It was probably open woodland, and the significant vegetation on the Nullarbor today is blue bush and saltbush shrubland with interspersed grasses. We can imagine that was there then.
U laboratoriju obližnje bolnice znanstvenici se spremaju analizirati dobro očuvanu lubanju uz pomoć najsuvremenije forenzičke tehnologije.
Hi Tom. Yes, I'd like a high resolution scan, 1 mm slices, and that'd be fantastic for me.
Mark Walters je medicinski znanstvenik koji se specijalizirao za rekonstruiranje smrskanih ljudskih lica i lubanja. Danas će pomoću kompjutorizirane tomografije zaviriti u lubanju drugčijeg bića.
CT data provides us a stack of images, and we can bring those into the computer and essentially we create a volume. And from that volume we create a polygon file. A polygon sort of engineering type of file allows us to do a number of manipulations. And one of those manipulations is to be able to generate a surface of the bone.
Sada na računalu mogu proučiti najsitnije detalje lubanje i stvoriti plastičnu repliku na osnovu digitalnih informacija, uklanjajući tako rizik od oštećenja dragocjenog fosila.
Well, one of the new observations today is that in the roof of the nasal bones here is that we saw a paired set of blind canals. And that's quite interesting. Usually when you see that kind of structure within the nasal cavity, that can be associated with an organ that's very good at detecting pheromones.
Feromoni su kemijski spojevi koje životinje koriste u pronalaženju partnera i ključni su za opstanak vrste.
Well, if these structures are associated with detecting pheromones, it usually indicates that this animal had a very seasonal style of mating behaviour, and that during those seasons they would be looking for mates on the wind as such.
Polako se pojavljuje slika ovog nevjerojatnog stvorenja koje je tako neobično da nema srodnika u današnjem životinskom svijetu.
This is one of the most fascinating mammals I think it's ever been discovered. It's an animal that's full of paradoxes. There's nothing quite like it exists anywhere else in the world.
Veliki pretkutnjaci lava tobolčara su prvi put viđeni na ostacima čeljusti prije više od 1 stoljeća, ali tek sada shvaćamo punu snagu ovog lovca.
This huge single cutting tooth here, or premolar tooth, and this large premolar tooth, cutting premolar tooth up here, are unprecedented in the mammalian world.
Snaga ugriza lava tobolčara je bila nevjerojatna. Imao je tako jake mišiće čeljusti da mu je ugriz bio snažniji od ugriza bilo kojeg poznatog sisavca, uključujući izumrlog sabljozubog tigra.
You'll notice when I put the shearing blades together here, they are like a pair of converging crescents. So whatever piece of meat or bone is caught within those converging crescents is sheared perfectly, just like an industrial guillotine or a pair of pruning shears.
Zubi lava tobolčara su godinama zbunjivali paleontologe. Oni su bili glavni razlog zašto se nisu mogli složiti je li bio mesojed ili biljojed.
If we go to the front of the jaw here, we have these two front teeth that extend here, a condition that is known as diprotodonty, di for two, proto front, teeth, two front teeth. And this is the condition that we find in all of the marsupials that are herbivorous. Things like possums and wombats and kangaroos and koalas all have this diprotodont condition. So here we have an animal that seems to be telling us with one set of teeth that it comes from a herbivore ancestry, and with another set of teeth it's telling us it's a carnivore.
Mark Walters u laboratoriju uz pomoć rezultata mjerenja moždane šupljine lubanje stvara trodimenzionalni model mozga. Dobivamo još jedan uvid u život lava tobolčara.
There's a lot of information can be derived from such a cast. We can see quite clearly sort of the lumps and bumps on the bone, and they correspond to different parts of the brain. Well, the very first thing and obvious structure is that we see these very large olfactory lobes. So this animal is going to be able to detect its specific smells over very long distances. So what that really tells us is that it's highly likely that this animal was looking for carrion and that was utilising carrion as a major part of its diet.
Dr. Peter Murray također godinama proučava lava tobolčara i svjetski je stručnjak za morfologiju australske megafaune.
This one here is probably the area for the forelimbs, for the arms. Right behind it is a sort of less defined area, which is actually part of the face, the jaw muscles, and that area. And then up above here is a smaller sort of a bulge. You can see it just fading away, which actually goes to the hind limbs and stuff. So you can see an emphasis in the brain here, quite a decent bulge and a nice differentiating sulcus here that suggests that its forelimbs are very important.
Also, we can see the parts of the brain associated with sight, and we can also see the big nerves that go to the eyes. And these nerves are quite large, so we can see this animal has also required a lot of good vision. So what we can quickly see by this cast of the brain is that this animal had a very powerful sense of smell. It also had a good sense of hearing and a very good sense of sight. So it was using all of its senses in its day-to-day activities.
Svaka kost priča svoju priču. Svaka kost daje nove informacije o ovom izvanrednom biću koje je opstalo na vrhu hranidbenog lanca milijunima godina.
Overall, we're building up a picture of this animal as a big, robust, muscular predator.
And it's managed to evolve from herbivory to hypercarnivory.
Ovo biće koje je proizašlo iz neobičnog fosila pronađenog u mraku podzemlja pustinje Null Arbor ima osobine mnogih današnjih tobolčara, kao što su tasmanijski vrag, klokani. Ali je ipak toliko drukčiji od svih njih.
All of those things are the wonderful paradoxes about this animal. It's almost like it was designed by a committee.
Biće na kraju vlastite evolucijske loze.
But my perceptions at this moment are of a opportunist, carnivore scavenger that hunted at night, probably operated in woody shrublands. I wouldn't want to have been a leaf-eating kangaroo with one of these guys around. I would imagine that he operated on his own, probably sneak within very close range of the prey and then leap at it. Now, either leap directly at it and grasp it with those big claws, maybe slash at it with the big claws, maybe leap onto its back and sever the spinal cord with the incisors, and then just sit down and shear off great lumps of flesh. I would imagine if there were any dead animals around, this guy's got a very good sniffer. He'd probably pick up the smell of carrion very easily. I think it would be quite a fearful animal to encounter.
Od ovog slučajnog otkrića je proizašla priča o životu u dalekoj povijesti. Ove i druge kosti, otkrivajući svoje tajne, nadopunjavaju naše znanje o prošlosti, a možda i osvjetljavaju put u budućnost.
I think the discovery all up, not just the Thylacoleo, but including everything we found in those caves, was a quantum leap in our knowledge of Australian megafauna of that age.
Thylacoleo carnifex, lav tobolčar. Izgubljeni grabežljivac iz australske povijesti neće nikada više hodati zemljom. Ali će njegovi tragovi još dugo vremena nastaviti graditi priču o životu na ovom planetu.
Well, if you pause for a moment and think about Australia, what is Australia's great heritage? Australia's great heritage is its flora and its fauna. And its marsupial fauna is absolutely unique. And this is the biggest marsupial carnivore that ever lived on this continent. And this animal was around at about the time that the first humans ever entered Australia.